Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time of day it might be for you. Thank you so much for joining in. My name is Ian. This is the first ever episode of Let's Talk Politics, a show where we talk about all things politics from the local levels, the state levels, all the way up to the federal levels. And today we are going to be diving into bigger government or smaller government, which is better, and which side and which parties are on which side. So we are going to dive into that here in just a moment. But before we do that, I have received my election pamphlet, both the state level one and my borough level one. We are almost into full swing early voting season. October 21st, we will be kicking off our early voting season here in Alaska. We had our first bit of snow as well. Oh my gosh, it was cold this morning. Woke up and there was snow on the vehicle. Didn't snow a lot, but I mean, hey, it started. I mean, we're practically midway through October at this point, so it's just a matter of time. I remember growing up, it was always snowy by the time my birthday came on the 22nd. So not too surprised to see snow starting to hit already. But it's not sticking. It didn't stick for long. So yeah, not too big of a deal there. But as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about bigger government or smaller government, which is better and which side the parties are on. So without much further delay, let's jump into it. And I wanted to start off with just kind of prefacing what the difference is here. So we have some parties that are for bigger government, others that are for smaller government. I'm more of a smaller government type person already in my role as a city council member on the city of Wasilla City Council, obviously. I have always been the one pushing to restrict the growth of government. And what this means and what this looks like is whenever governing bodies have the ability to spend money and purchase things or hire other people, you want to always consider the future impact of what it would look like for other companies or other private companies. To give you an example is in the city of Wasilla, we have to hire people for plowing snow. In some situations, we plow our own snow. It is more beneficial for the city to own or purchase vehicles or equipment to plow their own snow or shovel their own snow on certain properties. These are things like sidewalks or just parking lots. Sometimes it's easier just because we're not getting a lot of snow. So it benefits us to go ahead and just purchase that equipment, plow that snow, or shovel it instead of hiring somebody else. Now, we always ask when we are purchasing these items, does this grow our government? Are we going to have to hire somebody to go out and utilize that new piece of equipment? Recently, we purchased a new Chevy truck, I believe it was, and we purchased a plow for it and a sander for it. And we said, hey, like, what's this plowing? It's plowing the Menards Center. Do we have to hire somebody? And it was no. The Menards Center is going to utilize one of its existing employees to utilize this piece of equipment when necessary. So this wasn't effectively growing government. The reason why this is important to us is because there are times where it is better to go ahead and hire a private company, because instead of us pocketing the money or paying employees of ourselves to do it, we can empower a private citizen and their company to do those services for us. This could be things like I mentioned, plowing and shoveling snow, building roadways, making repairs to roadways, building buildings, doing repairs to buildings. There is a whole slew of different jobs that could be done either in-house by government or subcontracting it out to another contractor, or contracting it out to another company. And I'm always on the side to keep the government small. Yes, is it great that we can have some government jobs? We can pay some people some really awesome wages and some awesome benefits. But private companies can do it better. They have less red tape that they have to deal with when trying to do the jobs, other than just getting it done. Put in a bid, tell us how you're going to do it, tell us how much it's going to cost you, and we'll award you the contract, basically. It's not as simple as that, but that's the layman's terms of it. So I always encourage people to, when possible, limit government. So there's 3 different scenarios I wanted to look at today. I have been looking at some of JD Vance's interviews. Specifically, 2 of these clips today are from JD Vance's VP interview that he did with Tim Walz. And part of the clip is also Tim Walz as well. But I wanted to look at these and kind of explain which side each of these people are on, whether they're on the big government side or the small government side or limiting of government side here, and show you and kind of explain to you what some of this means in the context of what it is. So the first clip I have from this is actually JD Vance's town hall that he did in Mesa, Arizona here just last night, I believe it was. And this is in regards to some of the energy conversations he's having. So let's go ahead and roll this first clip and watch what he has to say, and then we can talk about it.
And if you want to take the country in a different direction, if you think, for example, the way to lower energy prices is not socialist price controls, but to unleash American energy workers to develop this stuff in our own territory, as Donald Trump would say, drill, baby, drill. That's the solution to high energy prices. And unlike Kamala Harris, we don't just have a plan, we also have a record to run on. Right, this is, I genuinely, I don't know Tim Walz that well, but I feel really bad for him because I can go out there and say, oh.
Now, what they were talking about here was the situation with Donald Trump, where he is wanting to unleash American energy. He is wanting to open up Alaska again to pull out some of its energy resources as well as other places in the country so that we can have energy that is being utilized from the country, from the US of A. What he pointed out was this socialist price controlling situation. And what we've seen a little bit of the Democrats is they want to control, they want to create all of these different bureaucracies and red tape and all these different agencies to control or tell you how to run your various operations. They want to limit the flow of energy coming out of the United States and push it to other countries where it costs more money to get that energy from them. Generally, it's natural gas or oil that we're pulling from other countries versus, wind or solar power, green energy type stuff. They're like, oh, let's do green energy. But it's so costly to do that here and to import those various natural resources through oil and gas that it drives the cost of energy up. And people don't always realize that energy then turns everything to cost more. I watched the interview with Dave Ramsey and Donald Trump where they were talking about how energy, if the cost of energy is 40% more, and so it costs 40% more to purchase the diesel for the diesel truck that's traveling across the country to put the bread in your local grocery store, it's going to cost, the bread's going to cost more because it just costs more money to get the goods from point A to point B. So everything goes up in price. But going back to it, talking specifically about bigger government here, is they want to unleash people, private companies, to do what they do best. And that is the free market. The free market will control itself. It's a supply and demand issue. My day-to-day job is a real estate agent, and what I saw, perfect example during COVID, was when home demand went up and supply went down, prices went up. But now that we've reached a point where the demand is starting to decrease and we are starting to see an excess amount of supply, the prices are starting to drop. The free market will control itself into the end. You just have to kind of let it be and work itself out. Now, there is limitation that we want to do. We don't want to let people price gouge. We don't want people to have a monopoly, because sometimes monopolies do create a situation where if you are the only company in that market that controls that commodity, then the price is going to go up. So there is a give and take to having government oversight in various businesses, but we don't want so much government oversight that we're growing the government just to micromanage the free market, and in this case, energy, which energy, as I said, is such a driving factor for all different types of resources in the country. Pretty much everything has to utilize energy, so that in turn, by utilizing the energy, it affects everything else. So one of the best things we can do is to release the energy market in the country and allow more companies to generate energy through wind, solar, or coal, or even oil or natural gas. There is no one option is the final option. We need a balance of all of them to help create a balanced energy market, create competition in the energy market. This would reduce government oversight, and it would allow the prices to start dropping on things. So this was kind of a twofold situation here. So the next clip I wanted to look at was in the case of abortion. And this one's kind of interesting, but let's watch the clip first, and then I'll explain kind of how it plays into growing government or having bigger government, smaller government, that type of thing. So let's go ahead and play this clip.
Planned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, I one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
I think this is first I'm going to say, we're not talking about abortion specifically here. I'm not going to cover kind of my thoughts on abortion. If you want to go watch a short that I made here recently about abortion and the national abortion ban, you can go ahead and watch that. I'll link it on the screen somewhere. But I like what he said about letting the states decide their abortion control. Abortion is going to be on the state level. We've already had that determined by Roe v. Wade being overturned. And so abortion has been pushed back down to the state level. And it can be very frustrating when you live in one state that says, no, we're not going to allow abortions, but then you can cross state lines and you have a different state that does allow abortion. So there's a little bit of confusion there. I will say that is frustrating. You would think that, hey, we live in America, so all the rules are the same, but that's partly why we're still divided into states, is because every state can govern themselves, because the best government is local government. And I've learned this by serving on my city council. what I've found out is that there are things that the Wasilla City Council can do that will affect the people tomorrow that, as a comparison, would be if the state legislature or the federal government did things today, you could not see for a year or two. How often, think about this, how often does the federal or state government, the federal or your state government, do things and you really never see the true impact tomorrow or soon? It's, generally speaking, something that takes a lot of time to start impacting you. Whereas local governments have the ability to impact their local communities greatly. And so what he's saying in this clip here is that the best governments to control or interact with the people, the best type of governments are their own local governments, or in this case, state level governments, because we're not going to have community-based abortion laws. Most people don't have that. Most municipalities or counties or boroughs don't have that type of power. But the states do have the power to enact those types of laws. We've seen that from the Supreme Court. That's what they've given the states the power to do. And so the reason why this goes with local, or this goes with bigger and smaller government, is because when you have it on the federal level, there is more red tape that's involved. There is more oversight needed for those abortion laws. But when you bring it back down to the state level, the people are more in line with what's actually happening in their communities. They have more say over it. There's less people in between the actual voter and the person making those laws. Now, it shouldn't really be that way at the congressional and Senate level, but there is. I mean, think about how far away you are from DC and those rule makers, and how often you're able to just pick up the phone and call your national representatives and have a conversation about that. It's not as easy as it is to pick up to your state level legislatures. So by having a state level abortion rule or abortion law, it allows for governments to have less oversight, because now we don't have a federal and a state level one determining those rules. It's just a state level determination. Now, the third clip that I wanted to go look at here is one that's around housing. And this one I feel like is the biggest and most impactful one, and going to be the most interesting one for what we're talking about here when it comes to bigger and smaller government. So let's go ahead and roll this clip. I think this one's a little bit longer, but let's go ahead and get this one started.
Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. First, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing release.
It's funny, here we are back to the energy conversation here, but we're not going to go into that. And I don't really want to touch on the inflation aspect. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time. But what I want to talk about is, what is the Democrats' plan to affect housing? They basically, instead of wanting to say, hey, as Vance was saying, like, let's let the free market do its thing by unlocking private companies. Let's let companies figure it out themselves. Let's let the people do it themselves. They said, hey, let's create more government agencies to come in here and oversee the building of more homes. Let's basically force people to do something that, yeah, we know that they do want to do it. I mean, we're not going to lie there. That's pretty obvious here. We need more homes available, but there's a lot of homes being built. There's a lot of homes that already exist, and I've spent the last 6.5, almost 7 years as a real estate agent, so I do have some type of knowledge around that. But specifically what they're trying to do is create new government loans to offer down payment assistance, which that sounds great and all, but look at what we just came through with COVID when we handed people a bunch of money. When you just print money and dump money into the market, it drives inflation and creates a whole slew of other problems. So going through and creating more government agencies to drive housing is not really the best option. If you look at what Vance said, he said there was really a two-pronged approach. Number one was, let's unlock energy. Let's let the market drive the cost of doing business down by dropping energy costs. But also, let's unlock federal lands. Let's unlock state lands. if you're at the state level, Alaska's considering this right now, unlock more land so there's more room to build. Yes. Are there some places that we don't want to do that? Do we have some national parks? Yes. But there's a lot of places that are locked up for who knows why that could be unlocked to allow for more homes to be built. And again, when we see the supply increase because builders are building more homes, the cost of the goods to build those homes drops because the energy cost to get those goods to where they need to go drops. The prices are going to come down. So I kind of talked about inflation a little bit, but again, it's the government overreach aspect. It's a different conversation where Vance is saying, hey, yes, we're going to utilize the government to empower the people to do what they do best. And then Tim Walz is over here going, hey, we're going to create more government to hopefully empower the people. And then in the turn, we're going to end up hurting them because the price of everything is going to go back up because all this money is getting dumped into it. And everybody and their mother is going to be jumping on this $25,000 down payment assistance. The average home, which in America is about $400,000, 20% would need that $25,000. Like that's the down payment. 3.5% is all people need to be able to purchase a home. 3.5% plus a percent too for additional closing costs. So we're talking 5 to 7% of a home purchase price is what's needed to be able to purchase a home. $25,000 is a lot of money. Yes. Could it be utilized? But in the long run, it's going to be unnecessary. So one of the best things we could be looking at here is, the difference between the Republicans' goal of reducing government and the Democrats' view of increasing government. They constantly are looking at different ways that they can go, hey, how can we, the government, tell you, the person at home, how to do your life better? Aren't you the best person to know how to run your own life, not the government? Do you really need the government coming in and telling you what you need to do and what you don't need to do? Because that's what they're looking at doing when it comes to all these different government plans. Growing government is the exact opposite of what we need. The Republican Party is constantly looking at ways how they can shrink government, and we've seen 3 examples here in 3 different clips from J.D. Vance, and you could go watch the Dave Ramsey and Donald Trump interview where they talk about some of these things as well. There are so many different avenues that could be utilized to reduce government overreach, and reduce the red tape and bureaucracy needed for us, the average person, to be able to run our day-to-day lives. So at the end of the day, which would you rather have? More government or less government? Because I already know the answer for me. I want to empower the people to be able to do what they do best. I would love to be able to say, hey, I'm kind of a government person right now. I'm a city council member. I got involved in my local community. And I looked at it and went, hey, there's a job that needs to be done here. Do I want to pay our government employees to do it? Which, yeah, it helps a few people. Or could I go pay a local company to do this job for us and touch so many more lives by doing it that way? Food for thought. Well, that is the end of our conversation today. Again, we were talking about bigger government versus smaller government. Which side is who on? And I think we've seen a few different examples as to which side the Republicans are, which side the Democrats are on. If you've enjoyed this, if you've learned something, share this with a friend so they can help understand what some of these different scenarios and how they can affect your day-to-day life, and how some government parties are trying to grow more government. Share this with a friend. If you like this, go ahead and hit that thumbs up down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It means so much to me when you subscribe, because it gives me the opportunity to see that you like this type of content. I hope to see you guys here again next time, but we will try and get something out weekly as of right now. I thank you so much for joining me. My name's Ian. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.